Talmud, we sort of went over already. We yesterday was really a review. We were talking about the fact that Hashem is going to judge us even for any small talk that we have with our spouse. The Gemara then talks about the story of Rav Kahana, who was sleeping, was hanging out in the bedroom of Rav, and he heard them talking. So the Gemara concluded that it's there are certain things that are appropriate to speak with one's wife, especially when, as the Gemara says, tzarech l'ritzuya, when it's necessary, when it's appropriate to appease her. And on the other hand, if it's not appropriate to appease her, then a person should be careful, extra things that they say. In other words, is it applicable to their relationship, or are they just having small talk, which shouldn't be at that time? The pasuk that this was based on, it was interesting how the Gemara brought it. The Gemara said that Rav Ila was going upstairs and he heard a child say this pasuk. So the understanding is that he himself he obviously knew the pasuk, but he didn't see it this way. When the child said it, he sort of saw a new meaning to the verse. So the question is, how did he initially understand the verse? And only when this child said it, did he say, now I see the verse means, look how careful we have to be with our speech. How did he understand the verse beforehand? So one of the commentaries says that the way you could simply understand the verse is that Hashem creates the mountains and the winds, and he tells a person what to say, meaning that a person's words are basically given to him by Hashem. And so a person might think, oh, they're such a good orator, but really it's how Hashem puts the words in their mouth. But here, he heard this child say this, and he said, that's a whole new meaning of this pasuk. Magid la'adam masecha, he's going to judge a person about even small talk. And the new insight that he has is based on the word ma. Ma, which literally means what is, like very insignificant. Ma often means something that's insignificant. So here it refers to small talk, ma sichai, siach of ma, talk of smallness, of small things, small matters. So that's how he's translating it, and it refers to the judgment that Hashem is going to judge every person. Then the Gemara brought the teaching that Hashem cries, he weeps in mistarim, in hidden places. And that's what we're in the middle of discussing, that does Hashem really cry? Does Hashem weep? And there seems to be a pasuk that says, b'mistarim tivka nafshi mipnei gava, that my soul weeps, Hashem says this, because of the exaltedness, which the Gemara explains means that the exaltedness of the Yidden that was taken from them and given to the Goyim, or because of the exaltedness of the kingdom of heaven that was given to the idols. So the Gemara is asking, is there weeping before Hashem? The Gemara answers that yes, Well, first the Gemara brings a verse that seems that there isn't weeping by Hashem. It's a pasuk that we say every day in davening. Which means that there is a rejoicing in front of Hashem, and it sounds like there is no sadness before Hashem. And the Gemara answered that it depends where. Hashem cries in the inner chambers, but in the outer chambers, there's joy.
Rabbi,
Yes.
I have a question. If it's saying that Hashem is crying because of the pride of the Jewish people that was given to the Goyim, so a person could ask, well, Hashem is making everything happen in the world. Why doesn't Hashem change that so it doesn't happen like that?
Okay, and what do you think the answer is?
Not sure.
Anyone?
People have free choice, but Hashem could alter the circumstances and events that the goyim should do tshuva, or they should recognize what's true and what's not true. But he doesn't want to interfere too much in what the humans are doing. He wants to keep his interference to a minimum, I guess.
And that's what prize that never.
1 second, Isaac. We got people holding up their hands over here. Yehuda.
Because we sinned and don't deserve it.
Okay. What do you think to that, David?
That's okay. But still, if it's making Hashem cry, you would think that Hashem would want to interfere and change it so it doesn't come out like that.
Well, because he wants us to do tshuva.
Okay. That sounds pretty good.
Okay, thank you, Yehuda. What about Ben? You want to say something over here?
I'm not sure if it's the right thing, but I think because we have a choice. It's some things are in our hands. God can change it, but the plan was not the way we behaved. So now he has to make other changes. In the meantime, he's crying because we did the wrong thing.
Not wrong.
So, I think Isaac, did you want to say something?
I just want to say he doesn't do wrong. It's a Rachmanis Nebuch that the time isn't right yet, and that we have more work to do until we get there. But the Rachmanis is not on Hashem, it's on us. But in what way? In the way that the next step we take should be to fix it.
He's asking, Isaac, he's asking that Hashem could easily fix this problem. So why is he crying?
Because that's a robot world. He moves the pieces around, and when they don't go the way he wants, he cries in the sense where it's a Rachmanis yet. Nebuch, we haven't gotten there yet. And then he does his best to move us along to do it. But ultimately, we have the choice. We're all looking to be God, except when it comes to making choices. Well, be a God and make a choice. That's the important thing.
Thank you, Isaac. Yeah, so all of you are more or less saying, I think, the same idea. And I mean, it's sort of like when you have to punish your children, and you end up losing as well. But that's part of education. Is or a teacher has to say, we're not doing the recess. We're losing 10 minutes of recess. You think the teacher wants to lose 10 minutes of recess? The teacher also wants the recess, right? But he says we're losing 10 minutes of recess, because he's got to teach them a lesson. So that's the way it works. You lose the Hashem loses.
Everybody's hurting until the thing is fixed. So in the meantime, God is hurting too.
Right. Yes, Robert. Right.
Through our studies, we have come to realize that some of the ways that Hashem's activities are sometimes misinterpreted or translated differently from what we would think they would be. So my feeling is, I can't imagine God crying, right? because for what God stands for, that's not his role to cry, because it's a divination of who he is. So for me, it is that he's saddened because of what we did, and it has to be corrected. So I just find that to be a better value given what Hashem's actions were. You know, crying is a very profound activity. And I don't know if he's ever been described as crying anywhere else in the text, because that means he's lost control, and he's, you know, but he's saddened. And therefore, in response to that, something has to happen for us to be able to then come back into his good graces. That's my interpretation.
So you see crying as sort of not being in control of yourself. So therefore,
yes,
you don't want to attribute that to God. Yeah.
God loses control. He cries. All right. So, you know, but we've learned through we've had at least two texts here, whether it's Art Scroll or others, where there's different interpretations of describing what Hashem has done on a continuum. And so by saying crying means he lost control. Okay. Because his defense, you know, whether it's defense mechanisms or whatever it is, how can Hashem cry? That means yes, he's been hurt, right? Maybe it's a different context of crying, but there's an exclamation of his disappointment and sadness, and that then initiates another activity to compensate or to diminish why he was hurt by those activities, those actions. That's the best way I can describe it this early in the morning. So anyways.
Well, I think men think of crying as a
weakness.
Losing weakness.
Right.
Weakness, yeah.
But women,
But it's not.
Women consider it part of their grieving and pain. That's part of the, it's not a weak.
It shows sympathy. It's not a matter. He's not crying for himself to make himself feel better. He's crying for us. Nebuch. When are you guys going to get your act together?
But that's a different context for crying. And it
right.
has not been.
Why are you interpreting it one way?
Let's redescribe the context of his crying out, or his profound sadness.
And what does he say?
The cry.
What does he say? How are you going to do it? Besides the fact that he's crying, is he described as saying something or doing something to give a little insight as to why? I would say unequivocally, Hashem is not crying because of his error, because of his mistake, or anything like that. There is no such thing. He's looking at the circumstances of this world as it is at this moment and says, never. But it's for us. It's not making himself feel better.
Right. In any event,
but that interpretation is contextually
That's my
different.
Opinion. Sorry.
Abraham
wants crying. Period.
Anyway, nice, interesting discussion. Yes, Abraham.
My definition of crying is feeling so deep that words cannot express them. So I think that put it in that context and it helps them. You know, it's not pity or anything. It's just you feel so deeply. There's no judgment in it, you know.
I like that. Good. Well said, Abraham. I think that's a very powerful statement and concept.
And I think it helps men understand it better. Women love it when a man cries. You know, publicly, when I speak publicly, then I sometimes choke, and the women are like, and the men are freezing up. You know, They love it. See a man show his emotions and see.
Right. Okay. Well said, Avram. Yes, Ben.
Yeah, I wanted to say I think Robert can describe things much better than me in words. But basically, I think God is sorry that we don't see the light and don't know how to behave, even though we were instructed. So he's feeling sorry for us, but because we don't understand and don't fulfill what he's saying.
Right. Okay. Well,
Yeah,
we're
so
gonna
it's
continue. We're gonna move forward.
profoundly
I think.
disappointed. All right, good. Thank you.
Yeah. But well, everyone had some nice insights over there. We're gonna move forward. So the pasuk over here tells us that there in one sense Hashem in the inner chambers Hashem cries, but in the outer chambers there's only joy and rejoicing. Now this is the way Rashi learns. Interestingly enough, the Rabbeinu Hananel seems to switch it around over here, and has the opposite way of. Now he does learn that we're talking about the angels cry, so that might add a little insight as well. He says it doesn't mean about Hashem; it means the angels that. By Hashem, Hashem doesn't have a body, doesn't have such physical things, and basically we're not going to use such terms for Hashem. But then, and he says over here that the inner chambers, there's no crying before Hashem, but the outer chambers, there is crying before Hashem. Interesting how he switches it around. Now, there obviously are deeper meanings to this whole concept of what that, what this refers to. That there is crying, there isn't crying, the inner chambers, the outer chambers, by Hashem, by his angels, but it's a little beyond the scope of the of our discussion here. But that's there seems to be some deep meaning behind the argument between Rashi and the Rabbeinu Hananel, what it means before God, that there's crying in the inner, there's crying in the outer. Yes, Robert.
I guess, in Art Scroll, you keep saying it's crying. In Art Scroll, they use the adjective he weeps. Now, is there a differential between weeping and crying? Some of it is of intensity. It's a sadness to weep, but crying is almost a loss of control. So I don't know if it's just the way the translations come out in different, in different areas.
So you think
crying? I know everybody wants to argue that, but that's weeping is a little less than crying.
Crying. Okay. I
there's
didn't
a sadness to weep versus outright crying.
Okay. I'm not so good at my vocabulary. Yes, Yehuda.
I see it as anthropomorphic, that we're attributing to God human characteristics that he doesn't have.
Right. But it's just imaginatory. Yeah. We're imagining, in other words, how we can relate, we can understand how God is feeling, so to speak. Right.
But he's not really crying or weeping.
Right, for sure. There's no question about that. But even to give such an image to Hashem, that's what they were. That's what sort of we were trying to figure out.
Well, but it also in different places says God holds us in His hand, and these are just not characteristics of Hashem.
Correct. Of course, yeah. No, there's no question that you have a point there, and that's how you have to understand it. There's no question.
Right.
Yeah. Yes, Robert.
Again, the previous paragraph, it says, why Rav Papa said there is no grief in the presence of the Holy One, blessed is He. Glory and majesty are before Him, might and delight are in His place. So to me, that's a more appropriate translation relative to Hashem's state of being at that point versus what we're talking about, weeping and crying.
Well, he's bringing forth the emphasis about the rejoicing, but that doesn't fit with the other verse that does say weeping or crying.
But it says there's no grief. There's no grief in the presence of the Holy One. Blessed is He. By that statement, grief is what? Grief is crying. Grief is weeping. Grief. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But he's saying that that's not in God's presence. His countenance.
Right. So the question is, how do you reconcile that with the verse that it says in Isaiah, that in Jeremiah, that God does cry or weep?
That may be, again,
it's a verse. You can't argue on a verse.
Misunderstandings relative to his actions.
Well, the way the Gemara answers it is, it depends if it's in front of him. It depends if it's in the inner chambers or in the outer chambers.
Rabbi,
Yes.
I wanted to say that Ozva Chedvav in Como is referring to the Mishkan or the Beis HaMikdash. That's Makomo, and that's why that's why you can't come in from a mess into the Beis HaMikdash, because too much mess is depression. Yeah.
Interesting. Right. Now, although what you're saying that we apply that verse to the Beis HaMikdash, it also has a different layer to the verse, which means more literal. And that is that it's in Hashem's midst, there's only joy. So what you're saying is a understanding of the verse, but it's a different layer of understanding. In other words, there's many different layers. So, but thank you for bringing that up. That's interesting. Good, nice point. Is that pasuk actually used with regard to Tumas Mace? Or, I mean, it would seem that there must be other psukim that are from the Torah itself, not a pasuk in Divrei Hayamim, that would give us the law that you can't be a Tameh person in the Beis HaMikdash, right? There's psukim in the Torah.
I'm just saying that why Tumas Mess is
right.
Chayiv Karli in the Beis HaMikdash.
Right. So you're adding a little insight. Did you see this pasuk specifically mentioned when it talks about that? Have you seen that brought down? That's why, or is this your own insight?
My own.
Ah, very nice. Okay, very interesting. So that's a very very nice nice thought. We're gonna continue with the next little piece over here. So let me tell you where we're up to. We are up to Uvati Baroi Loy, and that is, let's see, it must be about 30 lines from the bottom, I believe. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Yeah, probably about 30 lines from the bottom of the page. So we're on page Hey Yomad Base 5b, about 30 lines from the bottom. And the Gemara says, in the Bati Baroi is the outside chambers. Is there no weeping? And only in the inner chambers does God weep, but in the outer chambers, God doesn't weep. V'haksiv, doesn't it say, and this is a verse from Isaiah, Vayikra Hashem Elokim Tzivakos, Vayomahu, Hashem, God of legions, called on that day, Levachi ulamispeid ulakarcha v'lachagor sak, that he called for weeping, for eulogizing, for baldness, for wearing sackcloth. So the verse implies that Hashem wanted there to be a public, sort of like in a public display of crying, of weeping. So it sounds like not only is in the inner chambers is there weeping, but even in the outer chambers, there is also weeping. Mm-hmm. And the Gemara answers, Shani Churban Beis Hamikdash, the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash is different, that then there actually was weeping in the outer chambers. The Afilu Malachi Shalom, even the angels of peace, Bachu, they cry. Sure, they weep. Shenemers, it says, Hen Elam Tzoaku Chutza. They Elam, it means the lion, means their chamber, their sanctuary, because the sanctuary is refers to is referred to as a lion. That the Tzoaku Chutza, there was crying on the outside, and Malachi Shalom Mar Yivkoyun, the angels of peace, they cry bitterly. So we see that when the Yidden, were exiled, the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, and the Yidden are going through such tzaros, and so in such a time, there's crying even in the outer chambers. And this could mean that even Hashem himself is crying in the outer chambers. That in other words, you could translate it meaning that in front of Hashem is crying, or it means even Hashem himself. And of course, it doesn't mean literally, but even Hashem himself is crying. Okay, so that's the Gemara about weeping before Hashem, or Hashem crying, and the pasuk of Mestorim Tivka Nafshi Mipnei Gava. So there's rejoicing before Hashem, but at the time of the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash was complete weeping, the inner chambers, the outer chambers. Baruch, do you want to say something?
Well, I'm not sure if this goes against what I'm saying, or because well, if the Batei Broi is still the Beis Hamikdash, but it's like it's the Azara, and the Batei Gavoi is the Heichal or the Kodesh Kodashim, then it's fine. And then what I'm saying, it goes with what I'm saying, because in all of those places, coming into Masmes is a Chayiv Karesh. And but I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to say that the Batei Kavoi, the inner chambers are the Heichal and the Kodesh Kodashim, and
yes, your pshat might work with Rabbeinu Hananel, that says that the Batei, he switches it around over here. It says the inner chambers don't have weeping, the outer chambers you could have weeping. So, but even that, it's a little, you'd have to tweak it a little. Your insight, it's
okay.
not so simple. You know what I mean? Because you have to understand also that it's not only tumas mace. There's other tumas also, right?
It's not the whole thing.
There's other tumas. Well, that would be Mitzayra. There's other tumas as well that
sure.
well, I guess tzaras you could say is like a mace, but sherets, tumas sherets. I mean, there's other tumas that are also problematic in the Beis Hamikdash. So it's not a simple pshat. I wasn't really sure where you got it from. But anyway, it's definitely a nice thought. Yeah. Okay. So the Gemara continues and it says, "V'dema tidma v'tered eni dima ki nishba eder Hashem." So it says that damoya tidma, you will surely have tears. You will tear. You will weep. V'tered eni dim, and my eye will roll down tears. Ki nishba eder Hashem. Or actually, it's all going on Hashem, I believe. But damaya tidma, it will surely tear in my eye. It'll roll. The tears will roll down my eye. Ki nishba eder Hashem, because the eder, the flock of Hashem, have been captured. Amar Rebbe Lazar says, Shalish demois halalu lama. What are these three times that it says tears? Who is it referring to? So the Gemara says that Achas al Migdash Rishon, one refers to the first Beis Hamikdash. V'achas al Migdash, one refers to the second Beis Hamikdash, and v'achas al Yisrael shegolu b'makoymon, and the third one is for the exile. So there's the Beis Hamikdash destruction, and then there's the exile. So you have two destructions of Beis Hamikdash, because you have the first and the second, and you have the exile of the Jewish people, and that is why Hashem is crying.
Rabbi, where's the third crying in the verse? Because I only see two.
Dema, tidma, dima. You see, there's three words that have that same shirish, the same root. Dalit mem ayin. The damaya, tidma, and dima.
Okay. Because in the English it just says, "My eyes shall weep sore," and then and run down with tears.
Oh, tears. That's it. Tears. That's the word. That's the Hebrew.
That's the second one. So
no.
my eyes shall weep and run down with tears. And where's the third one?
Okay. So when it says the Maya Tidma, it will surely weep, right? But it really says it twice, and that's how we're translating it, to surely weep. So the first, when you started reading, what was the translation? How did you start?
It says shall weep sore, which means greatly.
So the weep sore is the double language over there. In the Hebrew, it has two words, dema.
I get it.
Weeping, it will weep, is what it means.
That's the literal way of reading it. The Maya Tidma, right? Weeping, it'll weep. Okay, but generally, it refers to it'll surely, it'll surely weep. It's very often repeat. You have psukim like that in the Torah that it has like a double language, which means Zachar es Korenu. I will surely remember him, right? Zachar ki machai emcha zechar amalek. I will surely. Right. Thank you, Isaac. Right. So you have psukim often that have like a double language. Okay. The Gemara continues and says, the Ika di Amri, and some say achas al bittul Torah, that one of these cryings is one of these tears. When it says tears, it's referring to the third one is for the bittul Torah, the missing Torah study that happens during the destruction, during the exile. So the Gemara asks, this goes good according to the opinion of Yisrael Shagalu, that it's referring to the Yidden that went to that are exiled. That's why Hashem is crying. Hainu d'chsiv, that's what it means in the verse. Ki nishba eder Hashem, that the flock of Hashem has been captured. Of course, that's referring to the Jewish people. But according to the opinion that the third one refers to the wasted time of Torah study, the wasting time from not studying Torah. My kinishba eder Hashem. What does it mean that the flock of Hashem has been captured? That's what it sounds like. The reason why Hashem is crying, not because we're missing time from Torah study. My answer is even Shagalu Yisrael Memkaiman, since the Jewish people are exiled from their place, Ein lecha bittul Torah gadol mizeh. There is no more greater bittul Torah, wasting time from studying Torah than this, because when you are exiled, it causes a tremendous amount of inability to study Torah. Now, so the pasuk actually says because they're exiled, but what it refers to is the missing Torah study because of the exile. That's what, in other words, that's the way they're interpreting it. Now, what is the difference between these two views? So it's either the tears are because of the Jewish people, the exile of the Jewish people, or it has to do with the wasting time, not being able to study Torah. Why would we think that it should be because of the Torah study? What about the fact that the Jewish people are suffering? They're going to exile. Wouldn't that be much more of a powerful reason for Hashem to cry? Any thoughts?
Well, it depends. It depends if the Bitul Torah caused the Galut or if the Galut caused the Bitul Torah.
If the exile causes the Bittul Torah, then what?
Then it's our fault. Actually, it's our fault both ways, but the Galut was really caused by probably Bitul Torah.
It is interesting. The Gemara does say that the first Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. It based on a verse in Jeremiah. It says, "Al ma of the haaretz al she'azvu es teirasi." The reason why the land was destroyed was because they forsaken my Torah. But then they said, "But what do you mean? We didn't forsake the Torah." So what did the verse mean? So the Talmud says that it means that they didn't say the blessing on
That's
Torah.
the second. Isn't that the second Beis Hamikdash?
No, because it's a pasuk in Yirmiyah. It's a pasuk in Yirmiyah. It has to be the first Beis Hamikdash. It's a pasuk. So it's al she'azvu es teirasi. It says in the pasuk they forsaken my Torah, means they forsake they didn't say the blessing on the Torah, which means that they didn't learn Torah in a way that it's God's Torah. They learned it in a way that it's like a nice intellectual stimulation, which of course the Torah is obviously great mind stimulation, but the main reason why we study Torah is, of course, because we're connecting to Hashem, trying to internalize the teachings of the Torah and not just enjoy the mind stimulation. We want it to be part of us. So what it seems like is basically that the two opinions here are dealing with the spiritual side of things or the physical side of things, that Hashem is crying for either for in other words, what overrides? Is it the physical exile that's like so devastating, or is it the spiritual missing, the missing Torah study that is, in other words, what is our life without Torah study, without our ability to connect to Hashem? That's really that's the worst part of the exile, is the fact that if a person, at least during the time when they were being exiled, that it caused such a stress on their ability to learn Torah. So in other words, their life is missing something, that they're missing the battery of their life, the energy of their life, which is the ability to connect to Hashem through Torah study. So it seems like that's the two opinions here, is either just thinking about the physical issue or the fact that you don't really have life without Torah study. Okay, anyway, the Gemara continues and says, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis learned, there are three things that Hashem cries every single day for these three things. Al she'efsher la'asek b'Torah ve'enoi osek, for those that a person that has the ability to study Torah and he doesn't, and so Hashem cries for him. Al she'efsher va'al she'i efsher la'asek b'Torah ve'osek, and Hashem cries for someone who can't study Torah, but he does anyway. And this is an interesting concept, that Hashem cries for someone who can study Torah, but he does anyway. And the question is, so of course, shouldn't Hashem be happy that he's studying Torah? He's going above and beyond.
Rabbi.
So there's a different ways of interpreting this. Yes, David.
I have a question on this verse from Isaiah, where it says, on that day Hashem called to weeping and to mourning and to baldness. So I thought baldness is something that the Torah prohibits a person making themselves bald in mourning. So how does that fit in, the baldness?
Because that's part, right. That's the extent. Excuse me. That's the extent that of the mourning that it should go to.
But of course, you're saying chas v'shalom that people will do it. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that the Beis Hamikdash, the Churban, the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash is what we went through much worse than just baldness for the Churban. We went through thousands of lives being killed and terrible goals, terrible torture. So maybe a little bit of baldness would be would be opportune or apropos.
So a person is normally not allowed to tear out their hair. Right. And that's what David is asking. So
yeah, okay, but that's for a mess. That's a stammer mess. That's just a relative.
So is that only on a dead person? Is that only what's the halakha? Is that only referring to a mess?
Well, as an expression,
what'd you say, Isaac?
As an expression of grief, you're allowed to shave your head.
Would you be allowed to tear out for another different grief that's not dead?
I don't know about payas, but if you want to shave your head and do a mohawk.
So Vayikra Karcha, it's in Vayikra Chaf Aleph 21. Just 1 second.
It's only in grief.
We would have to look it up in the, in Shulchan Aruch or in the Rambam, but let me just see here. I don't have the Shulchan Aruch in front of me, but I'm just pulling up something online here.
Maybe what it means is that
Yeah, I'm not sure if it would only apply to a mace. It does say al mace, but haser shidachos al mace. Okay, so okay, so it says "Hakoreach roishay al yaser." If a person does it because their boat, their house fell, or their boat drowned, they are putter ve'enoi loike. You don't get lashes. Ella ala meis bavad, only for a person who did it for someone who passed away. But it sounds like it's still prohibited. It just says putter ve'ena like it. Doesn't, it's a little unclear if it's, that's interesting that the Rambam writes that it leaves it a little vague. It's in chapter 12, halacha 16, that does that mean it's permissible, or is it prohibited?
Well, I still think the pshat in the pasuk is that our mourning should be so intense that we feel like doing the korcha, that we feel like tearing our hair out.
Right. I hear you. It could be that's the pshat. Very
I believe I don't have the Chumash in front of me, but I believe also that Rashi talks about that back then they had the customs of what they would do. Now, besides that, on cutting your hair, it's you're not supposed to follow their styles and things like that. But aside from that, I've never heard of an isser of pulling a chunk of hair out of your head.
For something negative,
No, payas and a mace. Those are the two things. And grief, if you're doing it, pulling your hair out because you're having business problems is perfectly acceptable.
Uh-huh. One second.
It's not preferred.
Yeah, I know the Gemara in Makkas talks about it, but I don't know the conclusion there. All right. Anyway, we'll have to take a look in Shulchan Aruch. Yes, Ben.
Yeah, I wanted to say about, you asked about the man that couldn't study and studied Torah and got that prize for him.
Yeah.
And I think that's proper because he put so much effort into it. It was so difficult for him to do it. Why is it made so difficult for him to study Torah? It should be made easy for him to study Torah. His life shouldn't be the one that is stopping him from studying Torah.
Why did Hashem make it that way?
Not why Hashem made it that way. Why it happened that the man that has the difficulty, he's the one that wants to study Torah, but it's difficult for him, and it should be easy for him, really.
That's the way it goes, you know.
Yeah,
the person
but
that has
anybody that suffers, that's who got cries for. He is one that suffers because he wants to study Torah.
Right.
So he cries for him too.
Doesn't say he's crying for him. Could be crying for the unlearned Torah.
No, it says that he does learn Torah.
I think he's crying with joy. Crying with joy. You can cry with joy. It's what he's doing that.
That someone's going above and beyond.
Yeah.
So listen, there are a few interpretations here. One of them has to do with the fact that he's trying, he's paining himself so much that Hashem is crying.
That's what I'm saying.
The pain that the person's going through. There is another interpretation here that that it's referring to someone who's not so knowledgeable, and because they're learning and teaching, they're actually messing things up because they're teaching the wrong thing. They're giving the wrong interpretations. They're explaining things wrongly, and because of that, Hashem is crying. So that's another way of understanding this. Okay, in any event, the Gemara mentioned, this Brisa mentioned three things that Hashem cries. One of them was for a person that could study and he's not studying Torah. The second one is a person who studies, who can't study, and he does anyway. And the third one is Val Parnas, on a leader, Hamisgoeh al Hatzibor, who acts arrogantly on the community, and he doesn't try to help them. He sort of just uses his leadership as a way, a means for his arrogance. The Gemara continues and says, Rebbe have a nugget Sefer Kinos. Rebbe was holding a book of laments, but it doesn't mean what we call Kinos. It means the book of Eicha. Eicha is the Megillah, one of the writings, the Megillah's Eicha, the book of Lamentations. And so that's what the Gemara, when it mentions Kinos, we call Kinos a book of poems, poetry about the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. That's generally how we call Kinos, but in the Gemara it refers to the Megillas Eicha as Kinos. So it says Rebbe was holding this scroll, Bekakari Begave, and he was reading it. Kimatalai Psuka, when he reached the following verse, it fell from his hand. What verse? Hishlech Mishamayim Eretz. He threw from heaven to the earth, refers to the glory of the Jewish people. He threw it from heavens to earth. And when he said that, Nafal min yodei, this scroll fell from his hands. It was such pain, thinking, internalizing that idea that Hashem had just thrown the greatness of the Jewish people to the earth. It fell from his hands. Amar, he said, May igra ram lebira amikta, from a high roof to a deep pit. That the severity of this phenomena is extreme. And Hashem lifted us up so high, and in one moment he dropped us all the way down. That's how great how severe this fall was. It's as big as like from heaven to earth. Rebbe and Reb Chia were going along the way, and it's interesting that it uses the term shakli vazli. They were shakli literally means they were taking and going on the way. What were they taking? Shakli v'yazli. So one of the commentaries mentions that shakli refers to they were actually talking and learning while they were going. They were shakel v'tarya. Shakel v'tarya means to take and and study and to tear apart, like to go back and forth to have a discussion. So they were shakli v'ozli b'orcha. They were going on the way, and while they were going, they were discussing. They were talking Torah. Kimatu lahu mas basa. When they came to a certain town, Amri, they said to the people of the town, "Ika tzurba me'rabbanan haga." Is there any rabbis here? Scholars? Nasal v'nakabel ape. Let's go and greet his face and meet him. Amri. So they answered, "Ika tzurba me'rabbanan haga." There is uma'are nayimhu. There is a scholar here in this town, but he's blind. So Amar Le, Reb Chia told Rebbe, Tiv at, you stay here. Tiv is in Hebrew, in Aramaic, you have the same word. Sometimes it's just one letter difference. Tuf and shin are interchangeable from Aramaic to Hebrew. So here it's like shave. You should stay. Tiv at, you stay here, and Rebbe was the leader. Of course, he was the greatest scholar. Reb Chia wasn't in the same league as Rebbe. Rebbe was the person who authored the entire Mishnah, the Nasi, the leader of the entire Jewish people. So here you have a great leader, and you have Reb Chia with him, and Reb Chia was a scholar, but he wasn't in the same league as Rebbe. So Reb Chia told him, "Listen, you're the Nasi, you're the great leader. You don't have to travel to go see this." The Talmud Chacham, this scholar. I'll go. I'll meet him and schmooze with him, and I'll come back. So he says, Tivat v'loy tizalzel b'nesiyuscha. You shouldn't mezalzel. You shouldn't lower the dignity of your nesiyus, of your leadership. You don't have to humble yourself to don't disgrace your position. Don't minimize you. Don't be mezalzel in your position that you hold. You hold a very high position, and for you to go to meet a regular scholar is you have to travel to him wouldn't be appropriate for you. So Ezel ano v'yakbalapi. I'll go and I'll meet this scholar. So Takve, Rebbe held him tight, and he said va'azel ba'adei, and he went with him. So in other words, Reb Chia told him you don't have to come. He said, "No, I'm coming." Takve literally means he grabbed him. What'd you say?
He tackled him.
Tackled him. Right. But obviously he didn't tackle him to the floor. But he basically went along. He went against his wishes.
Says he grabbed him.
Yeah, he grabbed him. So
Just saying the word tackle and tackle is the same thing.
So anyway, so he went along, and Kihava Mifteri Mine, when they left this scholar, Amar Lahu, the scholar told them, Atem hikbaltem panim hanirim ve'enon nirayim. You received a face that is seen but doesn't see. In other words, you came to greet me, and I don't see, but you came to greet me, and you should merit that tizku lahakbel panim haroyim ve'enon. You should merit to see a face, to greet a face that sees and is not seen, which means you should merit the Shechina. Amar Le, so he said to him, Amar Le, so Rebbe told Reb Chia, the Iku Hashta, the Iku Hashta. Hashta means now, and Iku means if I listened, if I trusted you now, and didn't go, you would have prevented me from this bracha. So if I trusted you and didn't come along, you would have made me lose out in this special bracha that I just received. So that's the story. Amrulay, but the story continues really. Amrulay. So they asked the scholar, Miman Shmialach, how do you know that it's such a great mitzvah that we did? He's telling them, because you did this mitzvah of greeting me, you should merit the Shechina. Right? What? How do you know that's such a great mitzvah? So Mipirke de Rabbi Yaakov Shmieli, I heard it from the teaching of Rabbi Yaakov. The Rabbi Yaakov is Chitaya, Rabbi Yaakov from the kfar, from the village of Chita of Chitaya of wheat. It was like, I guess they probably planted wheat there. That's probably their source of wheat. It's called the kfar Chitaya. So have a makabel ape de Rebbe called Yoima. He would he would be makabel ape de Rabbe, the face of his Rebbe. He would go every day to say hello. Kikash, when he got old, Amar Lei, his teacher told him, you don't bother yourself. It's too much for you. Amar Lei, so he said to him, is it too small what it says about seeing the rabbis, that it says that that he will live forever. He won't see destruction, won't see the grave. Because you will see the scholars in their death. What does that mean? That if a person sees a scholar when they're dying, he's guaranteed to live. Yichya, he's guaranteed to live. He adds in his life. And if you see a scholar in his life, al achas kama v'kama, how much more so will you add to your life? So he's translating the verse in an interesting way. The simple meaning of the verse is a little different, but the way he's translating this verse is to mean that if you see a scholar when they're dying, it's a very big blessing for you. In other words, it's you gain life. And if that's true about when they're dying, how much more so in their life, that it's very beneficial to you. You will be blessed. And that's how I know the scholar said that by you coming to see my face, you will be blessed and you should merit to see the Shechina, the divine presence. So that's the end of this story. My time is up. Have a wonderful Shabbos. Sei gesund, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay.
Thank you. Shabbos, everybody.
You Monday.